you change, then everyone around you, if they want to continue to relate to you, has to change. If you change and they don't want to relate to you, then they've already changed. And so you've exerted power, you've exerted influence in their lives. And that shift begins to shape, and some shifts begin to shape revolutions in ways, it shapes transformation in ways that change the entire course of history.
To wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just a little, poor little me. And since you're all here and engaged in this sort of inquiry and listening to this sort of lecture, I assume that you're all on the process of waking up. Or else you're teasing yourselves with some kind of flirtation with waking up, which you're not serious about. But I assume maybe you are, not serious but sincere, that you are ready to wake up. So then, when you're in the way of waking up and finding out who you really are, what you do is what the whole universe is doing at the place you call here and now. You are something the whole universe is doing in the same way that a wave is something that the whole ocean is doing. The real you is not a puppet which life pushes around. The real deep down you is the whole universe. So then, when you die, you're not going to have to put up with everlasting non-existence, because that's not an experience. A lot of people are afraid that when they die, they're going to be locked up in a dark room forever. And sort of undergo that. But one of the most interesting things in the world, this is a yoga, this is a way of realization. Try and imagine what it will be like to go to sleep and never wake up. Think about that. Children think about it. It's one of the great wonders of life. What will it be like to go to sleep and never wake up? And if you think long enough about that, something will happen to you. You will find out, among other things, that it'll pose the next question to you. What was it like to wake up after having never gone to sleep? That was when you were born. You see, you can't have an experience of nothing. Nature abhors a vacuum. So after you're dead, the only thing that can happen is the same experience, or the same sort of experience as when you were born. In other words, we all know very well that after people die, other people are born. And they're all you. Only you can only experience it one at a time. Everybody is I. You all know you're you. And wheresoever beings exist throughout all galaxies, it doesn't make any difference. You are all of them. And when they come into being, that's you coming into being. You know that very well. Only you don't have to remember the past in the same way you don't have to think about how you work your thyroid gland or whatever else it is in your organism. You don't have to know how to shine the sun. You just do it. Like you breathe. Doesn't it really astonish you that you are this fantastically complex thing? And that you're doing all of this and you never had any education in how to do it?
So the aspen itself, some people refer to them as the healer of the forest. And I made note that they're considered to be one of, if not the largest living organism, and that their connections are all underground, often in harsh terrains. So their root systems run laterally more than deep. They run out and around and cover, they can cover a lot of expanses, and they come up in groves, and they grow not by seed dropping, but by the shoots coming up.
If you open the work of a lepidopterist, someone who studies butterflies, somewhere in that writing, you're going to find the language of astonishment.
Every one of these 20,000 species have different color patterns, and every one of them has different shaped wings. The diversity is just so magnificent.
As you watch a butterfly, to describe what you're looking at, you can't really put it into words. That's biology, it's also magic.
Here it is, an ongoing draft of a new tool for framing conflict transformation in the here and now. It is called the Butterfly Model. It keeps developing the expanding framework for peace building of John Paul Lederach, which originally was inspired by Maura Dugan's nested theory of conflict. The Butterfly Model explores an integral and organic approach toward conflict transformation.
All days come from one day, that much you must know. You cannot change what's over, but only
What is the Butterfly Model? It is an organic model that listens and mirrors the dynamics of creation. It trusts nature and its processes. It empowers the peace builder to identify, map, and consciously follow nature. It engages with conflict in the here and now. It mirrors the peace builder within the model itself. It understands conflict from the perspective of energy flow.
in your heart you wonder which of these is true. The road that leads to nowhere, the road that leads to you.
What are the assumptions of the Butterfly Model? The inner self, relationships, and the world are all aspects of the same community process. Arnold Mindell. We must look inwards to know our own internal world before we can map clearly the internal state and the mind of the other. Daniel Siegel. You become what you pay attention to. Herm Weaver. The real peace builder is nature itself, not a person. Our greatness lies not so much in being able to remake the world as being able to remake ourselves. Gandhi. Finally, we build our intervention in who we are and not so much in what we know.
You may travel far, pilgrim, it's a long way to find out who you are. Pilgrim, it's a long way to find out who you are. Pilgrim, it's a long way to find out who you are.
Tree that was no longer alive, and it had bark that was peeling. The places where the bark exposed was gray in color. It seemed dry. And one of the things when I'm looking at that I notice is how much our eyes can easily fall onto the immediate surface, but there's a story behind the surface. There's a life under the surface, the below, underneath there. And with aspen, what I find is that there's a process of peeling that off, taking it away, and beginning to reveal the things that are still there, and in many regards calling out to be noticed, to be brought to light, to be lifted forward into a full color again. Well, right now it doesn't look very nice. The outer surface is not what I'm looking for. And for me, that's a huge reflection on life. Because so much of what we see is on the outside.
I had to figure out why in the world this was happening, right? Where is this coming from? And the only sense that could be made of it was that someone had constructed a certain way of looking at people like me that justified a certain maltreatment, a mistreatment of folks like me, and I needed to know where it was coming from. Evans was the name that my slave master gave my great-great-grandfather, and now it's the name that I have. I don't know who I am in that sense.
And one of the most fascinating things for me about coming to the table was really getting at those deep stories from descendants of people who were slaveholders, and talking about the harm and the pain that was created from participating in that institution, and how they experienced parents who were so emotionally disconnected. So in order to enslave someone else, in order to inflict that kind of harm on another human being, you have to sever or put in a little box your sense of humanity.
At that point, it was a climax for the white European male. He was on top of all things in his known world. And there was power dynamics, there was greed, there was a sense of superiority and all of that. You know, we're still trying to figure out how to get rid of the dread, the legacies and the sort of sludge that we have carried with us because of that history. It has taken a lot of undoing.
I remember feeling this tinge of fear shoot through the core of my being, that somehow I couldn't have pride in myself. I couldn't be proud of myself. And what I found was white people seem to try to distance themselves from themselves. I have certain theories about why they might do that. But pride was seen as something bad. Self-love was seen as something bad. You find your identity in everything else but yourself.
It's impossible to look at a caterpillar turning into a butterfly and not ask how. Their metamorphosis, their life cycle, how did this happen? This astonishing, remarkable transformation.
In a metamorphic insect, what you've got is 2 body plans. You have to first form one functional body plan, and then you have to switch gears and you have to take and form a new body plan. I am amazed by development when it goes from egg to caterpillar, because it's such an intricate process.
You're peeling a layer away. And that layer had enormous life, was protecting things at one point. One of the things you actually are doing is you'll be peeling back, and you'll be watching, and you'll be working with it to remove certain layers and let other things that are actually quite beautiful emerge. And to me, that's a huge metaphor. How are you with situations, people, communities in ways that the outer pain, ugliness, whatever it is that's been there, is actually giving way to something that's always been there, but hasn't always been noticed or hasn't had opportunity to be expressed. There is very clearly a kind of a inner-outer thing here. Conflict is not always when we're at our best. And sometimes when I'm in conflict with someone, I'm certainly not at my best, right? And so to have an ability that takes account of the bark, but finds a way to let the inner beauty come. And sometimes that takes a long time, because a lot of times it won't come unless it's safe enough or a person notices certain things, etc. But for me, there's a metaphor that's there between below and beyond, between inner and outer, between the bark and the core.
And I remember walking through the structure of the point of no return, and I became paralyzed. I could not move. And the only thing that we could do was sit on that wall, and we wept, and we wept, and we wept.
History was told from one perspective, and so historicity is to say that there were many different, it's not exactly history, it's the meaning making of the past. History says this is the truth of the past. Historicity says this is the meaning that was made of the experiences that we had in the past, and we're trying to unveil many of those.
You've got to get rid of or digest the caterpillar tissues. They won't work for the adult. In fact, the cells themselves disappear, but then their components are recycled and are turned into a kind of soup out of which the adult structures will be built. It's very carefully engineered. So you got to know where you're going to end up before you start.
That my journey has been a journey of finding ways to begin to notice what's around me, to be more present with it, and noticing the humanity in a person, noticing the beauty of what's there, noticing the beauty of when I'm walking or etc. And that is a very significant part of what I would consider to be compassionate presence. So how to create little doses, spaces, openings where we experimented with ways to notice. A few of you used a little knife to pluck it away and push it back. We used sandpaper to start to take away the rough, dry edges. Some of you went slow with sandpaper. Some of you went along with me to the machines that permitted you to carve away and to shape. Just the notion about the sandpaper that was rougher shaped something, but in the shaping it was actually releasing. It was letting something come forward that had always been there but could never be noticed unless the other things came.
Or in the place that I'm in now, just trying to live into what I want to be and who I want to be, knowing full well that others will see me in ways that I don't like. And so what I've done now is I've decided I'm going to be black and I'm going to be proud and I'm going to live into my blackness in a way that conjures up all the stereotypes, or as many of the stereotypes at least that I'm comfortable with conjuring up for you. Because what I want you to see is that as you stereotype me, as you look at me and you stigmatize me, what you're seeing is not what you think you're seeing. You think you're seeing me, but what you're really seeing is you, right? I'm not a nigger.
Absolutely. We have to break free. And that's, I think, it's constant self-examination of my own, where I might have blinders on to my own prejudices. And then, and discussing that openly with my African American cousins.
Coming home is going to the other. And excruciatingly, going to the other that you call the enemy. What is fascinating is you go home in the sense that when you really reach the other, who do you find? Yourself. Who do you find? God.
This model supports Lederach's logic to complexify before you simplify, as the practitioner enters into the chaotic dimension of the conflict. It is the journey of multiplicity, interdependency, and simultaneity as the practitioner navigates through the four wings of the model and returns organically to the very center where the conflict keeps being transformed with new meaning in the now.
It's like a different organism. Transitions have to take place in the heart. Transitions have to take place in the antennae. Transitions have to take place in the reproductive organs.
You have to recreate adult legs, adult antennae, adult eyes. You have to change the shape of the brain and the connections between the antennae and the eyes. You have to reformat the gut so that it switches from eating plant material to eating nectar. You begin to see the depths of the problem. So for evolution to have created this sort of pathway gradually, it would take a miracle.
The wood also has cracks I love the cracks. Sometimes they grow because you're opening a space that has not been opened. And so when it opens, it's drying again, and there may be a portion that will crack longer and bigger. I experiment with filling those sometimes with silver or coral and turquoise, because for me it's like kind of bringing something out. Sandpaper that went from really rough to finer and finer and finer. And the more you did that, the more you were working on moving from shaping to now letting some of the beauty that's there actually emerge. So the moment of bringing the oil to the wood is a moment of instantaneous joy. And I wanted some photography of the faces, not just the wood. And I think maybe you caught a few, because when people first saw what was coming after all this work, there actually was kind of an awestruck look on some of the faces, because it's one of the few times that you will have instant gratification in your life, you know, because right then and there you saw, wow. Wow, I said you got to get the face.
It's his reaction. Whoa, look at that.
Oil, when the oil goes on, the places that are the softest absorb more. The places that are the hardest will resist it. The knot is the area where the new growth had started. It's a branch that's coming out. These are the hardest areas of the wood. And that hardest area of the wood also often contains the most color. Following a bit of the lead of Mark Nepo, the poet, the thin membrane. So in this case, it's the thin membrane between the inner and the outer life. And now we see it in its place, that there has a certain, this is on the butterfly model. This is the place where the U and the X are meeting. And we're watching it because this is the place that the tree, this location, had the courage to come out. That it looks like an eye. And so it's almost like I'm engaged in a conversation with this piece. And there's an inner eye looking out at me. And I'm looking back in at this inner eye.
As the quantum physicist David Bohm said, the attempt to live according to the notion that the fragments are really separate is in essence what has led us to the growing series of extremely urgent crises that is confronting us today. Perhaps the mystics are right stating that there is no inside self separate from the outside world, but rather one seamless intimate totality, always changing when viewed from the object perspective and never changing when viewed from the perspective of the totality. There is no outside world. There are no others. We are complex living systems, part of each other and the larger world we inhabit. The world is in me as much as I am in the world.
When I work with this kind of thing, I find that it's good for me for remembering and forgetting. So it's aimless. My mind becomes aimless. In other words, it can wander. And it becomes, at the same time while it's wandering, it becomes intensively focused. So it becomes a meditative space.
What is the self? Most of us share a strong intuition that our own self is an irreducible whole, that there must be some place in our brain where our perception and our sensation all get together and create thoughts and imagination and define our future. But neuroscience today is discovering that there is no single brain structure that embodies the self, and it's pointing to the fact that what is creating the sense of self is a complex mental neurological map allowing us to function as one single organism. Biology tells us that the human body is actually an ecosystem of trillions of bacteria, microbes, viruses, all with their evolutionary agenda. What is then the self, if what I call me is not one organism, but really trillions of different living entities? And look at the internet, this amazing web of connection in which each one of us is like a neuron, giving input and receiving information as much as viruses and bacteria are doing inside our body. Body and mind, our skin, can no longer be used to define the boundary of ourself. We are all connected with nature, with billions of people. Could it be this illusionary image of ourselves as separate beings that is keeping us in this perpetual state of anxiety, scarcity, fear, dissatisfaction, and leading us as a society at this very delicate point in evolution with the current ecological, economic, and social crisis? We need a new story, a new myth to redefine our role as human in this interconnected universe. As the astronomer Carl Sagan said, we live on a small rock circling a star, which is one of 400 billion stars comprising our galaxy, which is only one of billions of galaxies comprising our universe, which is possibly not even the only universe out there. And that is a perspective on human life well worth pondering upon while we celebrate the mystery of the self.
Pilgrim, how you journey on the road you choose to find out why the winds die and where the stories go. All days come from one day, that much you must know. You cannot change what's over.
The model mirrors the logic of evolution with an eternal dance of birth, death, and rebirth. It always comes back to the conflict, because it is through conflict that everything grows in complexity and beauty. Chaos is the gate towards a new order. It is chaos's great destructive energy happening in the now that releases us from the imprisoning patterns of the past and gives us the gift of a new future. It is through chaos that a world of new, peaceful possibilities emerges.
Which of these is
But for me, the notion of aimless time is deeply healing. I cannot think my way through a lot of things that I experience in my life, but I can give myself the gift of aimless time, of having no purpose in the sense that it's trying to accomplish something with my thinking. And so here's the paradox. Aimless time often are the beginnings of the creative times. The one thing I've learned is a small rule: if something brings you a lot of joy, stay close to it. And if you have difficulty and you feel like you've lost that, then ask yourself, don't ask yourself where the joy went. Ask yourself, what was it that brought me joy, and why is it no longer present in my life?
When you see certain effects in nature, it's your responsibility as an investigator to find the cause that will explain the effect. If you saw a mechanical device of the sophistication of a butterfly, you would not for a moment hesitate to ascribe that to intelligence, because the butterfly is so much more sophisticated, almost beyond our comprehension, than anything that we make. Planning, foresight, artistry, engineering. When you process all the evidence revealed through metamorphosis, and then you ask yourself, in your own experience, what kind of cause could bring about these results? I think the only reasonable answer is an intelligence that transcends the natural world.
May it be when darkness falls, your heart will be true. You walk a lonely road, oh how far you are from
I just want to say a special note of appreciation to Iago, who started this with having the courage to reach out. Well, I do want to say very clearly that I'm very moved by the way in which you've engaged the frameworks that I've worked with. And it's the butterfly thing, you know. And you have been able to bring into that what some of us have talked about but never were able quite to touch it and locate it. And you're unfolding it in ways that are very powerful. So there would be so many things and elements to talk about across what you're doing there. But it's revealing, and it's provocative. It's evocative, it evokes, and it encourages. It makes so many connections.